You are listening to the Special Needs Children podcast with Chitra Iyer. Chitra Iyer is a parent of 24-year-old Shravan Iyer who has epilepsy, cerebral palsy and autism. She is the CEO of MFA and has been helping families with life-centered planning to reach their personal financial goals. She is also a trustee of a parent support group, the Forum for Autism, which was set up almost 2 decades ago. MFA is a 17-year-old organization working in the personal finance space. They have set up a dedicated practice to help families with special needs children to plan their financial goals and invest for them. The thoughts shared here are a result of the discussion with parents, caregivers, siblings and professionals regarding the planning of a person with special needs. In this expert series podcast, Chitra Iyer is talking to Ms. Mary Barua, a special needs parent, an activist, educator, trainer, and advocate for the rights of persons with autism and of their families. Her untiring work has resulted in autism being included in the Disability Act passed by the Indian Parliament. In this interview, Mary will be sharing do's and don'ts for parents with special needs, a must-listen for every single family.
Hello, everyone. A big warm welcome to you on this expert series of my podcast for special needs children. Today, we have the most inspiring and one of our, I call her a guru. I call her a very, very close friend. I call her somebody who has motivated me and taught me so much. And I am sure she's taught all of you over all the years of her teaching, training, and how she's been after all of us. I have with me Miss Mary Barua. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Chitra.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time and agreeing to do this again with me. And last time we had done this in Hindi. This time we're going to do it in English. So, to everyone, just to quickly introduce you to those who don't know you. Mary is a special needs parent herself. She is mother to a beautiful young adult, Neeraj. And she's the founder and director of 3 pioneering institutions in India. The first one that she set up was Action for Autism, a parent support group. And from where she helped many other parent support groups to be set up all over the country. She also set up Open Door, a special needs school for autism in Delhi. And she set up Ananda with her entire team, which is a residential home for special needs individuals. She's an activist, an educator, a trainer, an advocate for the rights of children and adults with autism. And of course, she's a huge advocate for all of their families. Her untiring work has resulted in autism being included in the Disability Act passed by the Indian Parliament. And today she does a lot of work with a lot of institutions involved in the government, be it the National Trust, be it the government related bodies, be it anyone across the country. And all of us have to just reach out to her and she knows exactly how to guide us. So Mary, today is about giving your guidance to a whole lot of parents as well as professionals who would tune in to just listen to you, because whatever you say is something that has to be captured, and I felt it's absolutely necessary for everyone to hear your thoughts. Okay, so can I please start with the interview? Okay, so Mary, what is your view when people think that autism is caused by the parent?
See, the thing is that there is the fact that autism is a condition where the person does not have any visible impairment, right? I mean, you can't see the disability that the person has. What happens is whatever the person is experiencing is manifested through the different ways that they behave. And hence, there is a natural tendency to blame people for the behaviors that are happening. So that is one of the primary reasons that parents are blamed for autism. Because, you are not a good parent. That's why your child is behaving like this. You're a mother who goes to work, hence your child is like this. You don't follow the rules of, our cultural rules. That's why your child is like this. So these are the things that happen. See, the other reason why it also happens is because we do still have a great deal of stigma against any kind of disability, right? So when there is a stigma, and there is a natural tendency for society to blame somebody for it. And it is the parents who get blamed, and most often it is the mother who gets blamed. Even if you take the two parents, in the majority of instances, it's the mother who's getting blamed, oftentimes by the husband's family as well. And this is something that has changed, but not very much, to be quite honest, because we work very closely with families from a different range of backgrounds and different parts of the country. And it never ceases to surprise us how entrenched this belief is, even amongst uh, well to do families, educated families, all kinds of families. This need to blame somebody for the child's condition. Incidentally, I have to also add here that, much to my dismay, I have heard medical professionals from some leading institutes who have actually sat at, meetings and said it is the parent who are the cause of autism. So getting rid of this is continues to be a struggle, but it is something that all of us must address. And one quick last point I want to make is that, all studies have shown, apart from the fact that it is a genetic component, etc., uh, you see that in the same family, you have two kids, one who has autism and one who does not have autism. Now, if the family was to blame and the mother was to blame, both of them should be having autism, right? And if neglect were to cause autism, then the kids who in our country live in, uh, you know, orphan kids who are in these orphanages in our country and who are really very, very badly taken care of, they should all be autistic. And finally, one last point, in studies with twin studies have shown that twins have a higher chance of having autism than other siblings, and monozygotic twins apparently have a far higher. So, twins that are born of the same ova have a possibility of higher chances of both of them having autism. So you can obviously see that it has nothing to do with the parent, but rather genetic, environmental, whatever you call it. So this is something that we will have to keep addressing.
Thank you, Mary. It's very, very clear and very helpful. I'm moving on to what about acceptance of our children in public places?
One of the things that happens is that it is true that when you're in public places, children with autism often feel excluded, and are often there is often active exclusion of autistic people from public spaces. And this is something, of course, that we have to address, we have to fight, we have to make sure it does not happen. Uh, but I think, and of course, in this, one works with, and not just us, many organizations do this now, work with people in public spaces, trying to sensitize them, do awareness programs, talking to schools. Public spaces also include schools. I mean, that's a kind of a private space, but it's also a space that is public in the sense that there are kids from all over different places coming there. So it's acceptance in every kind of space, um, is driven by how society views the child, but also, more importantly, is driven by how the parent views view their own child. Because if I were in a public space, and if my child has externalizing uh, his anxiety or happiness or whatever, I mean, that is essentially what happens with kids with autism. The feelings and the emotions they're experiencing, they externalize it in ways that are different from the non-autistic. Some will go kind of all quiet and don't speak and stuff like that. Others do things that are more physically visible, right? So when they do things like that, um, the thing is for us to understand that if that behavior is not damaging anyone, harming anyone, or doing anything like that, or damaging property, they have every right to do those. Or if the behavior is something that would be, considered kind of gross in the sense that if, I mean, I'm not talking about people playing with, saliva and, excretions and things like that. But when people are flapping or people are jumping or vocalizing under their breath, quietly vocalizing or spinning or doing any of these things, what happens when families are with them? The vast majority of families get very embarrassed. And we spend all our time trying to stop them, telling them, mat karo, chup raho, aisa nahi karna hai. Now, first of all, what the kid is doing is not harming anybody, whether the kid or the family or property or anything, why does that child not have the right to flap or spin if he sure wants, right? If it's not creating any kind of a disturbance for anyone. But we, the parents, constantly tell the kid to behave themselves. Aisa shararati mat karo, stop doing that, stay quiet. Now, when we do that, what is the message that we are giving people? We are giving people a message that there is something wrong in the child's behavior, that it is a bad behavior that needs to be stopped, right? So, typically, this is something that happens in schools also. And I was speaking to um, um, a group that were discussing school behavior and kids with autism and stuff like that, and they were mostly parents. And what happens is, yes, many schools are not very inclusive, but they're taking kids in. Now when I go there and tell the school, oh, my child has all these behaviors, and he does this, pata nahi isko kaise band kare. On from the word go, I'm telling the school that my child has behaviors that I perceive as bad, right? And then when I'm dropping my kid off and he's flapping a little bit and I'm saying, mat karo, hat niche karo, what is the message I'm giving the teachers? What is the message I'm giving everybody? If I am so uncomfortable about my child's behavior, how do I expect the teacher to not be uncomfortable? If I am so uncomfortable about my child's behavior, why will I not expect the shopkeeper to be uncomfortable as well? How can I expect the shopkeeper to be comfortable? We get uncomfortable about our children's behavior, and then we get upset when society is uncomfortable about the same behavior. Chitra, I have traveled with Neeraj pretty often, right? By air. I've brought him to Mumbai, I've taken him to Goa,
Yeah, yeah.
for workshops and stuff like that, right? And of course, he's had all these kinds of, flapping and all that kind of behavior, tapping and even pushing and stuff like that. And honestly, because I some of the behavior he's doing, I know would not be looked on well, but I stay very comfortable. So people get a bit confused. Oh, is that okay what he's doing? Oh, but she seems all right, so it must be okay. And it is us, the parents, who have to um, be comfortable. If I don't accept my child's autism, I cannot demand acceptance from the world. If I don't accept my child the way he is, I cannot demand acceptance from the school. If I'm comfortable, that's the message I'm giving people. When I'm accepting my child the way he or she is, that's the message I'm giving the world, that, okay, what this kid does, it's different. I've never seen it. Maybe it's a bit weird, but it's okay. It's weird, but it's okay, right? That kind of stuff. Of course, they will think it's weird because people don't know what it is, and that's okay, right? But they're not going to stop my child from participating because I'm comfortable around how he or she is. So we have to give that message. And until we start giving the message that whatever my child is doing is okay, And I know it is hard for parents. It is hard when they start out because we've all been brought up in a very restrictive society where we are all expected to behave in a certain way, right? We have become a little bit more relaxed, I think, now. But otherwise, kids are supposed to behave in a particular way. They're supposed to keep quiet in front of adults. They're not supposed to speak until they're spoken to. We have all of those kinds of things. But until and unless, I've forgotten the point I was talking about, but to get back to what I was saying, that unless we give the message to society that whatever my child does is okay, society will not be accepting. When I give the message, oh yeah, I was talking about parents being finding it hard. Yes. So parents have grown up in that kind of a society. So for them also, their kids must behave in a particular way. And it takes time. So I can absolutely understand a parent who's just received a diagnosis for their child having a lot of difficulty with this. That's absolutely understandable. But by the time, a couple of years have passed, parents have to move on and accept that this is what my child is. And I often give an example of children with cerebral palsy, for instance. Many of them have spasticity, many of them have different kinds of movements, right? And their parents accept it because their parents know that when my child is waving his arm around or is slurring their speech, it is not something that is within their control. This is something that they just have to do in order to be able to express themselves. But when autistic kids do the same thing, we as parents are not accepting. So that is what has to change. Because if we do not, if we continue to be embarrassed, ashamed, about the way our children are, acceptance in society will never come about, inclusion will not come about. This will have to be led by parents.
Thank you so much, Mary, for that. And while we keep fighting with all of the instances that are happening around us, be it the airlines or be it whatever it is, I think, as you rightly said, it's very much pretty much what the parents are doing also that leads the way.
Chitra, if I may add something here, I recall one incident where this parent was not allowed to board a flight. And somebody I know who was there said that, what was happening was this parent kept telling their son, it was a boy, sit quietly, stop misbehaving, kept on doing that. Even the kid was doing nothing really. He was just flapping, getting up and sitting down a few times. They kept doing that. And they were not allowed to board the flight because actually other passengers stopped them. Now, that would naturally make us very angry. But think about it. If the parent is constantly giving a message to all the passengers around that this boy does, and in fact, what this bystander, the person who'd seen it, mentioned later, is that you would think that he was going to do something really violent and terrible. Now, if as a parent, that is how I'm behaving with my child and giving this message to the people around, so then the other passengers, they all ganged up and they said, how can this boy then come in the flight? And he wasn't allowed to take the flight.
Yeah.
But it started because the parent, and it wasn't somebody who'd just been diagnosed, he was in his teens. The parents were acting like he's going to do something terrible. Whereas what this person said is that he was, because this person knows about autism, knows me, knows my son, etc., that he was doing nothing, just flapping, vocalizing a bit, standing up, sitting down, standing up, sitting down. Every time he stood, the mother would say, sit down, why are you standing? So, if you do that, what is the message I'm giving? So sometimes, when we get very angry with how society is teaching us, I think we also need to stop and introspect about what is the message we are giving. And I'm not saying society should be treating us badly. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that um, we also have a hand in how society teaches us, treats us. Maybe not in
Absolutely.
every instances, but sometimes
Yeah.
it does happen so.
Absolutely. So, Miriam, moving on to, you know, is there a cure for autism? Is what a lot of younger parents would obviously ask, and also older ones. And parents often land up doing a lot of things because they are touted a lot of cures. So, what guidance would you can you please share? What would you say?
Okay. So, see, what happens is that, um, autism is the one condition where the search for cure is the highest. Do you know that? It's the highest in autism. And
Yeah.
why do you think that is so?
Mm.
Simply because, and you know the answer, Chitra, because most of our kids do not have any external signs of a disability, right? There is nothing physiological that you can look at and say, oh, okay,
Yeah.
this is what the
Yeah.
kid has. So therefore, parents always have this feeling कि बस कुछ एक कर दे तो ठीक हो जाएगा, right? And that, that that vulnerability जो parents में रहता है, parents are vulnerable, everybody has expectation of their child, and then they get the diagnosis, and that diagnosis is often given in a dreadful manner, like forget about this child, इसका तो ज़्यादा कुछ होने वाला नहीं है. So all of that adds up to how the parents feel, rather than being told that a child will be able to do a lot, just get on and start working with him, right? Instead, they are told, and it happens even now, that iska to kuch hone wala nahi hai. So parents get very vulnerable. And we know that there are enough professionals around waiting to make a quick buck. That's what the world is about. So if I can make money by telling parents, because I own a couple of donkeys, then I tell parents, oh, donkey milk is very good for your child. Well, not many people want to buy donkey milk, but if I say donkey milk is very good for curing autism, I've got a ready market. I don't have to worry about what happens with my donkey's milk, right? So that is what happens. There are enough people selling all kinds of rubbish like stem cell therapy and hyperbaric oxygen therapy and chelation and all kinds of rubbish, telling parents that their children will get cured of autism. The other day, there was this doctor from AIMS who's cited all these research studies, and she said there is absolutely no proof to show that chelation or stem cell therapy or hyperbaric oxygen therapy or yoga, any of these cure autism. None of them cure autism, right? And actually, yoga is often touted as a cure for autism. Yoga is a great lifestyle option, right? I practice yoga, right? I practiced it, I think, from the time I was a kid. But I would never say that this is something that is going to make my child better or cure him, right? So the thing is that parents, there was, I'll just narrate a story about this particular parent whose son is, I think, 20 now. When the son was about 7, the family had come to us. And the father kept talking about cure, kept talking about cure. And I kept saying, and he wanted to try, at that time, he wanted to try stem cell therapy. It was very new at the time, right? And I told him, you know what? Uh, this is not going to do anything for your child. And he wanted to try hyperbaric oxygen therapy and all that stuff. And he had tons of money. And I said, look, I know you have money. You can spend your energy and time and money doing all of this. But if you spend that energy on helping your child learn, it will be done much better. And what the father said was very interesting. He said, Mary, if you showed me a stone lying on the road and pointed to it and said, if anybody pointed to it and said that if you wash that stone with water and give that water to your child every day for a year and your child will become okay, I will do it. So, there are parents who will, and he said that, he's one of those who just cannot accept that there won't be a cure. So he's willing to try everything. And I know that kid now, he hasn't really gone anywhere. The father tried everything, has done everything. And see, the other thing that happens is that when I'm spending several lakhs on something to fix my child, it's a psychological need to see change and improvement. And I will see it. I will see it, right? So what happens is when parents spend a lot of money, invest themselves emotionally in some kind of so-called cure, they believe they are seeing improvement. And I know parents who kept saying that they are seeing improvement, and there was work going on with the child with a special educator. And they, according to the parent, it was the hyperbaric oxygen therapy that brought about the change. So all the hard work that the special educator had put in was nothing. It was the hyperbaric oxygen therapy that did it. It took those parents, and the parent I mentioned and other parents, it takes them years before they will begin to accept. But by then, the damage is done, because by then, the parents have written glowing testimonials. They have recorded glowing testimonials. And all these, peddlers of various therapies have got those testimonials. The
Yeah.
parents can't say, give those back to me now. I don't believe what you were saying. By then, it's too late. And the number of parents who've come to us and said, bekar tha paisa ka. But when we say, why don't you speak out about it? They don't want to do it. Because, and I can understand why. Why waste my energy? They are already so defeated after having done all of this and nothing having happened, that now they don't want to waste their energy on that now.
And it's very difficult to accept that you made a mistake, right? And that you were a fool and you were fooled. Very few would actually,
Very
yeah.
few will accept. Very few will accept. They will not want to talk about it anymore. Many of them don't want to talk about it. A few will talk about it, and some will continue through life saying, no, there was improvement, no, there was improvement. Who wants to say that I was a fool and I wasted 6 lakhs? How many people would be willing to say
Or
that?
to try and help everyone else who's doing the same mistake, and to protect them, and to we have a parent here who went all out and saw to it that she informed everyone. She said, I was an idiot, I was a fool, I spent money, please, please, please don't do this.
I think
And
parents like that, we should really, applaud, because the vast majority of parents don't want to do that. If they made a mistake, they'll tell us, but they'll stay quiet about it.
yeah.
Sometimes I can understand, they're tired now. They
Yeah.
had so much of hopes, they spend their energies doing all of this, and then, what do you do? And, the unfortunate thing is, even now, say, for instance, talking about stem cell therapy, which is the latest, right? We've gone through chelation and secretin, and all that crap is done and gone. Parents have, thrown away, I don't know, millions of rupees trying to fix their kids. So stem cell is the new cure, right? So Sri Lanka stopped stem cell from coming in. Their psychiatric community stepped in and said, we will not allow this rubbish in our country. And they threw that doctor out, the one in Mumbai who's doing all of this. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
But you know what? He's gone into other countries. For instance, in Zambia, there is an entire setup being run by this doctor of stem cell. And there is a total PR campaign going on. And I know that the community there are trying to stop this person from peddling, but they've not been able to get the government to step in or the medical profession to step in. So now everybody in Zambia is busy getting stem cell therapy. Same people from Bombay, the same ones who've been banned.
So as a community, we are so vulnerable, and there's all of these people just waiting to hawk.
Yeah, they are like vultures,
Yeah.
waiting for people, just waiting.
Yeah. Yeah. So what actually works? What is it that parents should actually do? What about children? What about adults? What would you advise?
See, what really works is what is called, people call it by different names, teaching them the way that they can learn, right? If you teach the kid the way they can learn, that's all you have to do, which would mean understanding autism, right? See, a lot of the teaching is exactly the way that you teach kids with intellectual disabilities. So you just break it down and teach them, which is fine. Breaking it down and teaching is a great way of teaching anybody. But along with that, keeping in mind the very literal understanding that autistic kids have, the difficulty that they have with generalization. So, all the understanding how the autistic mind works and tailoring the learning to that kind of mind is what really helps them all learn. And one of the things that we believe very strongly is providing predictability, clarity in what is going to happen, so kids know how things are going to function, what they are supposed to do, what is expected of them, right? So once you do that, that is when they will learn. Because if we just teach them without doing any of these things, they will learn a little bit. But if we want them to reach their potential, then we have to do a little bit more. It's I just want to give a little example. So yesterday we were discussing this. So there is this young man who has just gone, he's done his education and all that, been placed in internship somewhere. And as happens with a lot of autistic people, there is difficulty in executive functions, difficulty in organizing yourself. And the typical way to do it in most places is keep prompting, keep telling them what to do, yell at them if they don't do it. But we have to keep in mind that they are really people who flourish if you provide them with visuals. So the first couple of days of the workplace, his bag was lying somewhere, his one tiffin boxes was in one place, his medicine box was lying somewhere else. When he had to collect it, he didn't know where anything was, right? Because he dropped it all over the place. The people who were supporting him as a job coach, initially the people who go in, they created a visual, kind of a to-do list for him, which he took in, and the next day he was functioning fine. And then it made him feel so good that I managed the whole thing on my own. So the thing is that I can spend my time yelling at the child and prompting and telling him. And Chitra, I have to narrate this also. So there is this school which runs B.Ed training in autism. And so the trainees have all learned how to help autistic people function better. But when they sit for their exams, when they appear for their exams, the people who are the examiners are people who are experts in intellectual disability, and they're good people, experts in their field, but they don't really understand autism. So in one of the answers, the kids have said that you have to provide a visual, and this is what the visual can look like. Their marks were cut because they were told that you have to keep reminding the student and prompting them, otherwise they won't learn. And with autistic kids, if you keep prompting them, they'll spend their life waiting for a prompt before they do anything. So, till we understand autism, there has to be a good understanding of autism in order for one to be able to teach them well. But unfortunately, now under RCI, it is believed that you don't really need anything different. It's the same as intellectual disability. So, not much difference is required.
So we still have a lot more to do there, but
We've gone back, Chitra. We've gone
yeah,
back. We had
yeah.
trainings that were specifically for autism. We fought for that, but it has all been overturned.
But I'm so glad that whether it's your mother child program or it is the structured training that you're doing for parents specifically, especially for mothers, what you're doing for even children who are coming, what you're doing online, what you're doing offline, how you're training people to be ready for school, teaching them how to be ready for work. All of this is really, really huge, very. It's
Chitra, the
just.
sad thing is that I can understand when people don't understand autism. That's okay. But when you actually have parents who go and say all this rubbish about structure is the real world structure, why are they teaching them about all of that? I mean, and that's coming from ignorance, of course, right? Because if you're ignorant, that's the kind of thing you will say. But when parents who are influential say these things, so we are placing people in employment who have fair amount of challenges. But it is the visuals and the structure that we are giving them, which is enabling them to work independently, right? And uh, actually, people who don't even understand what that is all about, but have power because they are people who other people listen to, who go and denigrate this need for predictability and visual supports that autistic people have. It's just really very sad. So how do you get this across that this is really what they need? Our employment program, right? It's the whole thing, the training, the soft skills training, the placements, and everything that we do is based on this very clear understanding of autism. When you listen to autistic people, I mean, I mentioned to you before we started about this National Trust Conclave, where there were autistic speakers, both speaking and non speaking. And they talk very strongly about the need they have for the environment to be structured. So we are actually making fun of something. As parents, we are making fun of something that autistic people themselves are saying that they need, that we need an environment that is structured. But we have parents and influential parents who go around saying, Kaise ho sakta hai? Where is the environment structured? Does anybody go and remove all the ramps or say that why should we demand ramps? Actually, to utna nahi hai bahar. We don't say that. We demand more ramps so that wheelchair users and people with mobility issues would be able to function. But for autism, we want to actually dismantle the efforts
So
that one
so
puts in. Yes?
it's
Sorry?
so detrimental for us
Absolutely.
also. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's really sad. It's really
Mm.
sad. And I realize it comes from ignorance because these are people who don't really know much beyond their own child, but believe that now, I know it all. So why do that? I mean, just keep quiet. If you don't know, keep quiet. Don't say things. So, it's unfortunate. This has been happening quite a bit lately.
Right. So, Mary, thank you for these, answering these questions, primarily to guide anybody, along their whole journey of life. It's not only for parents who are newly diagnosed, but also all of us who have much older children, right? What I wanted to also ask you is, are there any specific other points that you think, could you think you would like to share with parents in terms of guiding them on what to do, what not to do, anything?
All right. I think that's a very good question. One, of course, is, what I've been talking about, learning to accept your child, accept that, what I had set my hopes on is different. Learning to accept, be non-judgmental, and love your child for whatever he or she is. In addition to that, a very, very important one is, there are often a lot of disagreement amongst parents. See, every couple has disagreements of all kinds. But with a family that has an autistic kid, in addition, there are other disagreements. There are disagreements on who's to blame for the way the child is, who's to blame for a meltdown that the child is happening. Uh, uh, why should this be done with the child? Who should be spending more time with the child? So there are multiple things that come up, and I can understand that you know these things will happen between two people and there will be arguments. But what is absolutely critical for the mental health of the child, for the development of the child, is that we do not have these arguments in front of the child. A kid does not have to be autistic. A typically developing child uh, uh, who is oh god, anyway, I'm not getting the word, but a kid in front of whom parents constantly have fights. We know, I mean, we all know how terrible it is for a child to watch their parents having a fight, right? um, and it has nothing to do with disability. But and I know neurotypical kids who often tell their parents, stop fighting, stop doing that, because they are so distressed and anxious by what is happening. Now, most autistic kids are not able to do that. A few do, right? But most are not able to do that. They do not know what is happening. All they hear is parents arguing about them, right? The argument is about them. And it's terrifying and anxiety provoking to have your parents fight in front of you and having an argument in front of you. B, when you seem to be the cause of the argument, the child begins to feel that, I'm something terrible. This is what I've done to my parents. Even, when parents say things like, ha, iska problem hai, ha, iska problem hai in front of the child grows up thinking that I am a problem. And then from that further, when parents are having an argument, I'm the cause of all of this distress in the family. So there's anxiety, there is guilt, there is blame. And sometimes parents have said, अच्छा वो तो कुछ समझता नहीं है.
Exactly. This is what I wanted to add. It's so sad. It's so sad that you just assume that they don't know and they can't get it at all.
How they believe that they samajhta nahi hai. And this is what I want to tell parents. Our autistic kids all have rich internal lives just like each one of us. वो एक्सप्रेस नहीं कर सकता है. एक्सप्रेस नहीं करता है तो उसका मतलब नहीं कि वो एक्सपीरियंस नहीं कर रहा है. और when you have autism, your expressions are very different from other people. We know that most autistic kids, their facial expressions are happy and sad. You cannot make out from their facial expressions that they're anxious, that they're surprised, that they're feeling guilty, right? Most of our kids, you don't see that on their faces. Not because they are not experiencing it, they are experiencing it. It's just that they are not able to externalize what they are experiencing. So we have to keep in mind that our kids have all these experience all these emotions and feelings, and it does not help them at all in their learning and growth and their mental health. It really impacts their mental health. So parents have to be very careful not to argue in front of their child. Just like we would do this with our regular children, it's doubly important to be aware of not doing this in the presence of our kids with autism. The other thing that I want to just mention is that, uh, you know, uh, parents often uh, expect, families often expect um, the mother to take care of the child. I know that nowadays there are a few fathers who are also pitching in, but that's a tiny, tiny minority. In the vast majority, it is the mother who has to be the primary caregiver for the child. Very often, the mother is also working. Um, and what happens is, as soon as she gets back from work, she also has to ensure that the husband is taken care of, the in laws are taken care of, the food is cooked and on the table, and stuff like that. So, and amazingly, this is rarely a matter of argument in families. You know why? Because most of the wives who are doing this, they've either psyched themselves into believing this is what I have to do, or they live in families where they cannot even protest and say, I cannot keep doing this. I'm also human. There's a limit to how much I can do. Many of them are in families where they can't even say that. And if there are any fathers listening in or other professionals listening in, I would tell them, please, when you're talking to families, help the fathers see this. And if there are fathers and other family members listening in, I would say, please be conscious. Because if the primary caregiver is exhausted all the time, then she cannot do a very good job of giving primary care. Whatever she's doing is not the best that she could do. And then that is not good for the child. Hmm? So I just thought of that and I wanted to add that.
Oh, Mary, thank you for that. Mary, what about any other communication related intervention?
I was just thinking I'll say something about communication. So, you know what? one of the things that happens, see, a lot of our kids are non-speaking, right? Of course, nowadays, a lot more speaking kids are getting a diagnosis. Earlier, if the kids spoke, then they never got a diagnosis, right? Or if they were fluent speakers. So now fluent speakers are also getting a diagnosis. But there are a lot of non-speaking autistic children. Again, with these kids, the thing that happens is there is this belief that um, the kid does not speak, so doesn't have anything to say, समझ नहीं है, बोल नहीं सकता है, कुछ बोलने का है नहीं. And Chitra, the thing is that it is not just parents who believe that. This is what schools believe. Okay, so now schools, including government schools, have to take in kids with autism, and if the child is not speaking, then they don't do anything with the child. They just keep them aside and ये तो कुछ नहीं कर सकता है. So they just make them sit in one place. And I'm going to share something that is very, very disturbing. So there are some schools, what they do is, if there is a child who runs around a little bit, or is, does not always listen to what the teacher says, what they would do is they will take a backpack, weigh it down with stones, make the child put it on, and have the child carry it around all the time, so that the child is completely exhausted after the 6 hours or 8 hours of school and just stays in their place and does nothing. So the teacher says, okay, my job is done. I wash my hands of this kid.
So the kid human, yeah.
And they have even convinced parents that aisa karna chahiye. So they're doing it. So this is actually child abuse happening.
Abuse, yeah.
This is cruelty and child abuse. And, that is why parental empowerment is so important, that you don't get sucked in by any rubbish that schools tell you. The parents are doing this at home also. I don't blame them, because they don't know. They were told by the teacher that aisa karna chahiye. So here is a child who is weighed down with a bag of about 5 kilos of stones, so that she's so exhausted that she can't do anything much the whole day. So anyway, to come back to communication, if the child is not speaking, there is often a belief that, there's nothing much that the child can say. So we have to understand that whether the child speaks or not, they can be taught to communicate, right? There is great understanding, and we have to be open to understand their communication. In addition, see, earlier the communication was largely signs and, pecs. Though I have to say, there is so much of confusion between structured teaching and pecs that it's not funny. There is so much confusion that any kind of use of cards is thought as communication, right? Anyway, so using pecs to communicate, signs to communicate, and now there are so many apps. Of course, earlier there was only Prolog Q2, which was an expensive app to use, but now you have Avaz, which is an Indian app. There is also another one that the name is not coming to mind, and I'll tell you in a bit. So there are apps that one can use, because a lot of
Jello.
Jello is there, no, but there is another one which is really good, better than Jello.
Okay.
It's as good as Avaz.
Avaz.
It's not coming to mind right now. What? Something drop. I can't remember the name.
Okay.
So there are all these apps, and the thing is that kids nowadays are all very tech savvy. I mean, they're all using mobiles and tablets and stuff like that. So it is very important to get kids to start using these alternate modes of communication. And one gets surprised by how they start communicating once they have these. And the thing to keep in mind also, in addition to teaching them, helping them use alternate modes of communication, to also keep in mind that there are kids who are very vocal, very articulate and stuff like that. But even they may sometimes have difficulty in expressing what they are experiencing. And that is something we have to keep in mind. So we have to be mindful in the way that we are communicating so that we are able to draw out their communication, helping them communicate better, keeping our communication very clear, direct, meaning what we say and saying what we mean, so to speak. Right? So those are things that are very important as far as communication is concerned. Okay, so I just want to go back again to the use of structure that I mentioned briefly. So, oftentimes parents ask that, or professionals ask, why should I use structure? One, of course, it enables them to have predictability. As a result, it helps to keep their anxiety down. When there is a predictability, that it keeps the anxiety down. It helps them learn good routines. It helps them deal with change because we know transition and change can be hard for our people. So, providing structure is one way of helping them learn how to deal with changes and transition. It also helps them to develop motivation. See, because for a lot of our kids, there is a lot of stuff that they can do, but they're not motivated to do it, right? So, what structure does, it helps to develop motivation. And, for us, the most important thing it does is helps to develop independence. You know, most of our kids can do a very, very great deal, and all of them can do a certain amount of stuff, right? But they are not able to function independently. You give them something to do, and then you have to be behind them, constantly prompting them. You, okay, now do this. Acha, ye kar lo, ye kar lo. That constant prompting has to be done. Once you introduce structure, you enable them to work independently without anybody having to constantly stay behind them, right? So, even things like, so say, I'll give you examples from Ananda, our assisted living. So, we have somebody carrying, go from the workplace to the residence, pick up their lunch bag, and walk back and deliver it to wherever it has to be given. Nobody has to tell him what to do, where to go, etc. He just checks his schedule. He knows I'm supposed to go and pick up the lunch. He goes out, walks to the apartment. He knows where the lunch box is usually kept. He picks up the bag, comes back and delivers it. Right? Now, this is a person who can do quite a bit of stuff, but had to constantly be told, now do this, now do that. When he arrives at the residence, most of them will have to be told, अच्छा इसको अब लेकर जाओ, अच्छा उधर लेकर जाओ, यहाँ क्यों रख रहे हो? So when you provide structure and visuals, you promote independence. You're not constantly standing there telling them, अच्छा you're weaving, अच्छा इस पैर को रखो, नहीं अब left वाला press करो, इसको फिर खींचो. You don't have to do that. Just put the visual in front and the person will do the work. So structure and visuals leads to independence, and ultimately in adult life, that is what is required, that they are able to function as independently as they possibly can. And the thing that happens when they become independent, and especially when they, as a result of their independence, they're working in the vocational, the sense of pride that they get. And we see this also when they go out to the workplace, when they are now able to function independently, earn a living. It's a natural human emotion. They feel a huge sense of pride and accomplishment. More than pride, I would say accomplishment, that I'm now able to do this. So, in training for vocational for autistic kids, based on you don't have to use the same kind of structure for everybody. It has to be individualized to the requirements of the person. But these are things that are very, very important for them to, have a quality of life.
Mary, would you like to touch a bit about parents following through with academics very persistently?
Right. Um, you see, following through with academics, I think that's great. I think if a child is really able to learn and is learning, they're all able to learn, but are they learning? The question is, it's not that the kids can't learn, but are they learning? Because what the school is doing, is it really helping them learn? So, following through with academics is great. But one has to see, is the child really learning? Because it's really sad that there are kids who have, gone through bullying and all kinds of stuff in school, and then don't know a thing. They really don't know a thing, because all they've done is they've learned things by heart. Parents have made them learn things by heart, and they've just brought it out on their papers and managed to get up to class 5 or 6 or so. So the first thing I would say, when we are working on academics, we ensure that the child is learning. If the child has gone into an academic thing, in a school, I think it's great. And I think what it is very important is for parents to accept that yes, this kid has autism. And yes, therefore, has a different way of learning. And therefore, I will make sure that he's actually learning and is not just doing things by rote, because that's not going to help the child in life later on. And that is what often doesn't happen, because we've seen it with our kids also. We've supported them and stuff like that, and finally the child has got into a school. The minute the kid gets into the school, the parents think, okay, my job is done. Now I just have to make sure he can go to school every day and is not thrown out. But that is not it. The point is, he must be there and he has to learn. School is for learning. It is not just there to get the school leaving thing, right? So that is a very important thing for parents to keep in mind. And so for the parents, we keep telling them, come back to us. Anytime you feel your child is struggling, is not learning, is just doing things by heart, he's going to have, or she's going to have, a lot of difficulty when he or she gets to class 6 or 7. So come back, take a few sessions on how to help them learn the right way. So that's one thing. Because, if you get and finish your education, that's brilliant. Having said that, the other thing that I want to say is that there are kids who finish their school, are in college, and still are not toilet trained. Now, if your child is not able to take a shower themselves, I mean, I cannot just focus on their education and say, I will help my child take a shower, I'll help him clean his bottom, I just want to make sure he finishes school. Because then how is that person ever going to get a job? Right? So, we have to keep a balance. We want to work on education, we want to support them in that, we want them to learn, but we cannot ignore the need for them to be able to take care of themselves independently. That is truly, truly, truly important, right? And that is important, particularly if we are planning to have the young person go into employment, right? So it's critically important, because ADL skills are a critical skill in employment. I can't go to a workplace and when I'm sitting with my colleagues, I'm dropping food all over the place. I'm not able to eat properly. I'm not able to wash my hands properly. When I suddenly need to go to the washroom, I don't know how to use it properly. It's not going to help. And unfortunately, that is sometimes the situation with kids who have actually completed their education. And we are taken aback, because one presumes that if you have finished your schooling, for instance, you have a certain level of ADLs. Not so. And then teaching the adult all those skills gets very difficult. So it's very, very, very important to keep ADLs in mind. And it is particularly critical in terms of vocational and employment. Yeah, I think that's largely what I wanted to say about this.
So, Mary, what about people who, a lot of parents talk about our kids flap around, they do certain things, and they'll end up, also wanting to do the same thing repetitively again and again. And, there are certain mechanisms, right, by which we can help them. What would you say?
Okay, so see, flapping and stuff like that happen, what we call stims. They happen when it can be, it's a way of the kid expressing himself or herself. So flapping can happen as a way of expressing happiness, expressing joy. It can be a way to express anxiety. It can be a way to express confusion. So when things like that happen, and we constantly tell the child to not do it, not do it, not do it, that is actually kind of blocking the child taking care of themselves. So that is something we don't want to do. If we feel the child is flapping out of anxiety, we want to understand what is making the child anxious. See, instead of trying to stop the symptom of something that the child is experiencing. I want to get to the root and find out what is it that the child is experiencing and try and work on that. The other thing is that sometimes children or people want to do something over and over and over again. Many of these are rituals that they have for self soothing. Just like stims are for self soothing, rituals are often things for self soothing. And again, what happens is that there is a constant uh, stopping that is done. The kids are stopped from doing it. What it ends up doing is just making it more and more stressful for the individual. And this is where structure can often be extremely supportive. So when we have, say, I mean, we have and had kids like that, say, for instance, at our school, and we have them at in our other programs as well. So what we can do is give them a child time to do that. So see, I'll give you an example, specific example that I can recall now. So there is this young person who had this constant need to repeat and say and ask these questions constantly, right? Now, obviously, when we are doing it in the class, it is disturbing the others. So what we did is we said that you can have a talk time, right? And of course, you can say these things. We never negate the need to do that, right? That person is doing that because the person has a need, maybe gets overwhelmed or whatever, and has a need to do this constant talking and questioning. And we don't say it's a bad thing to do. We say, of course, you can do that. We will have times for it. And so we start off by giving multiple times on the schedule, right? So he finishes an activity, he can do this. Then we slowly reduce the number of times. Over days, we reduce the number of talk times that he has. And eventually, he had a couple of talk times in the day, and that was it. He had 5 minutes to sit and talk and say everything he had to say and make people repeat, do everything he wanted. And the rest of the time, he didn't do it. So we cannot stop them from doing the things that they need to do. Like, for instance, if I need to do the Wordle and do Scrabble and all that every day, I have a need to do it. You can't come and tell me, no, you can't do that. What I will do is I'll find a time to do it. So the rest of the time, I'm not focusing on that,
I
right?
mean, all of us listening here would want to know from you that what is the actual, lifespan for an adult with autism and an individual with autism, and what are the health concerns that a caregiver should be aware of? If you could please touch on this.
Okay, so see, seizures is a major one with about a third of all autistic people who had at least one seizure in their lives, or some who have multiple seizures, some who have them rarely, some who have them almost every day. The thing is that it is important, of course, to consult with a neurologist, get them on the correct medication and stuff like that. So that's something that one has to do as far as seizures are concerned. One of the things that happens with seizures is that uh, you know sometimes parents get so stressed out that they often, I know parents who don't sleep at night because they're afraid their child will have a seizure, right? So my son had seizures. He hasn't had one for a few years now, but he used to have quite a lot of them. I could stay up with him, or I could say that I will sleep with him in the. First of all, I was not going to stay up with him because it's not feasible. It doesn't make sense. I have to keep my good health so I can look after him or support him in the daytime, right? Secondly, I would not want to sleep with my child. He's having a seizure because I feel that I'll be able to do something about it. I can't. If I'm sleeping and my child has a seizure, there's no way I'm going to know he's having a seizure, right? Because I'll be sleeping through it. So I think parents, I know it is very anxiety provoking for parents, but get the right treatment, get the medication. There are kids, I mean, even at our center, we have kids who have seizures every day, right? We have to, it's something that we have to be focused on, aware on, make sure that the medication is being taken. There is one thing that I would mention, that there are kids who fall a lot. So we have one who falls, and not just falls, he's like standing straight, he falls like a pole backwards, just like, just straight off. And it has happened. I'm standing next to him and he's fallen, right? And there's nothing you can do, no matter how close you are. I'm right next to him. I had no idea it was going to happen. Suddenly, in a second, he's just fallen flat at the back and he kept splitting his head open. So what we started doing is now he wears a boxing headgear, because the other kind of thing that you have, when that scooter, the motorcycle helmets, those don't have any openings, and those, and they're hard and stuff like that. Whereas the boxing headgears are soft, they have openings for the ears, so you don't have any ear infection with moisture collecting there and stuff like that. So that is something I would advise parents whose kids keep falling. So this young man, who has a lot of sensory issues, we use structure to get him used to keeping a helmet on his head. The magic of structure people don't realize. So he now keeps a helmet on. He has one for wearing at home and one where he goes to the workplace. Right. So that's about seizures. As far as health conditions that are concerned, the other thing I would mention is dental health. A lot of autistic people have, sensory challenges. I know my son has huge issues with a toothbrush in his mouth. He cannot let the toothbrush go near his upper gum. It's too painful for him. So naturally, that leads to dental issues. So it is very important to have regular dental checkups. Because because you cannot keep brushing your child's teeth even when he's older. So my son brushes himself, but I know he doesn't do the top gum very well, and I'm not going to do it for him. He's an adult; he has to do it himself. What I can do is ensure that he has dental checkups. By the way, at Ananda, we have a dentist coming twice a week for dental checkups. No, sorry, twice a month for dental checkups. And it ensures that dental health, because if your dental health is poor, it can lead to a lot of other health issues. And oftentimes kids have what we see as behaviors is because they have pain in their teeth, and dental pain is really it's one of the
excruciating. Yeah.
excruciating, and we often don't think about it. So I think dental checkups is very, very important. And as far as lifespan is concerned, I think autistic kids have the same lifespan as everyone else, unless if there are huge health issues, which may have an impact. But other than that, there is no study to show that their lifespan, not that I know of, maybe I don't know about it, but to the best of my knowledge, there are no studies to show that their lifespan is not
Compromised in any way.
as other people. Yeah.
This was fantastic. Thank you so much, Mary. Thanks for really extending on the time, and every word you spoke was really so insightful and so helpful. Thank you again, and I'm sure
you,
many are going to benefit from this. Thanks a ton.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
You were listening to the Special Needs Children podcast with Chitra Iyer, the CEO of MFA and a trustee with the Forum for Autism. If you find this podcast relevant and interesting, it will be great if you leave a review, share, like and subscribe. You can also let us know if there is any specific topic that you would like us to cover. Feel free to email her on chitra.iyer@myfinad.com, or you can call her on 9833785892. That is 9833785892.